Yassas. What happens when you take two vibrant brothers that are descendants from the Greeks in Constantinople, embracing their American roots, and then ask them to serve up rich tales of traditions, cuisine, childhood memories, and a hearty dose of humor? You're about to find out. This is Baklavine Banter, your passport to all things Greek.
Welcome to another episode of Baklava and Banter. I am Petraki.
And I'm Soto.
And I'm
Well,
Giannis.
So, folks, we have a special edition today. We're going to have the Far East meets the Hellenic world. So, let me introduce to you John Yanni Kim. So, a little
Hello, everyone.
So, I've known John for about, I'd say almost 10 years now, John.
Yeah.
More or less. So John used to work at was a picnic table,
Picnic Garden.
picnic garden, a Korean barbecue place, which was in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, which basically is in the shadows of New York City, and we met him there, and that's where it all began for us. And we've been spending a lot of time together over the last few years.
Yep.
So we brought him on because John has a love of food, not just Greek food, but all foods. So, John, why don't you tell everybody the homework assignment I gave you the other day, so you can be prepared for this for the show?
Sounds good. So the question that was proposed to me, well, I guess he said first start with your three favorite foods from Greece. And then he said think of which foods I believe Koreans could make better.
So,
So I go ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
So I basically broke it down into two parts, right? Like if this food had originated in Korea with Korean ingredients, would it taste better? And also with the Korean culture and mentality, like what would that result look like? So I guess starting with my favorite foods is just the easiest place to begin. Um, that being said, when I first started thinking about this topic, one of the things that led me to realize was the very reason I love Greek food is because in a lot of ways it's the polar opposite of Korean food. And I
Okay.
never realized it as much until I started thinking about it, right? So what do I mean by that? Number one, I think Greek food is the epitome of don't break it if it ain't broken, or don't fix it if it ain't broken, right?
Yep.
Like Greek food does not change. I could go to a Greek restaurant on anywhere in this planet and the food will be very similar. The menu will be very similar. I will find the tzatziki, like yours might have a little more dill than theirs. Like maybe they use some more yogurt, like, but it's all very similar tasting food. So that was one of the things I realized I love about Greek food. Greek food to me is the most simple, achievable balance for food, right? Like
Sure.
Korean food is the opposite. Korean food is like, we love the original, but what else you got? How many flavors can you give me, right? And that's where this kind of thought process took off.
Okay.
So I started with souvlaki.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyone in particular, or just overall?
I am very partial to lamb souvlaki
Okay. Now you're talking dirty
because
to us.
lamb doesn't really exist as a protein choice in Korea.
Okay. Fair
Wow.
enough.
They're very not into gamey, smelly. Like if there's even the hint of smell, they can't eat it, right? That's why it's
Yeah.
heavily marinated a lot of the time. Korean barbecue is heavily flavored and spiced and eaten with all these other things because they don't like gamey smells, right? I personally, nothing in this world is as tender as lamb.
Got it. That's funny that you're saying about smell because you got like the pungentness of, and we just had this conversation, the pungentness of the radishes.
Sure.
So that smell is more, I guess, acceptable
Yeah.
than let's
So
say a
I
gamey meat.
I guess it has to do more with the inherent flavor and taste of an object. Because even in the
Okay.
case of a radish, to be fair, they don't like the taste either. That's why it gets turned into kimchi, right? That's why
Yeah.
it gets
Yeah.
pickled into the chicken radish.
Okay.
It's bombarded with vinegar, salt, and sugar, so it doesn't taste like radish anymore.
Got it. Got it. So when you eat a souvlaki, do you prefer it like in a pita? Do you eat it just on rice? What do you prefer?
So I understand souvlaki is just the skewer, right? And I
Yeah.
understand that all of the various ways to eat it are just, your preference.
Yeah.
That being said, if I'm eating souvlaki as a full meal,
Yeah.
which I often don't, it's usually just an appetizer. I ordered an entree and I'll get one or two on the side, right?
Sure.
In
Sure.
that scenario, I like it plain, maybe some tzatziki, but really just you're trying to get a little bit of that grill, that salt and pepper, and then just that really basic flavor of grilled meat, right?
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. And what's your next one?
So I think my next favorite food is probably coquinisto. I
Huh?
think
Wow.
coquinisto, like when they
Okay.
do
Okay. Okay.
like
Okay.
the
Okay.
different braises, like a
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
tomato.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a red tomato braise with like
Sure.
wine sauce, and again, I would prefer lamb,
Okay.
but
Okay.
beef. Everything is acceptable within this
Mm-hmm.
medium, and I think served with orzo, it's best. Like all
Sure.
short pastas are generally okay, but I think the texture of
Yeah.
orzo really
It-
carries well with
It's
that
ba-
really soft braised meat.
it's
Yeah.
basically a beef stew, a
Yeah.
beef
Yeah.
stew
Exactly.
stew for
Yeah.
those that are
Yeah.
yeah.
And like our mom makes like different variations of stews. Whether it's with chickpeas or chickpeas and lamb or lamb with peas. It's still a stew.
Hmm.
And for me, I don't know how it is for you, but I prefer those over rice. Like I said, traditionally we have them over rice. Is there or is there some? Yes, but it all depends, on what's available that day. You know what I'm saying?
Sure,
There isn't really a
a correct way.
yeah, yeah, because it all, I think the rice I think adds a little more as a filler than it does because the meal is the meal itself.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so, what's your third one? What rounds off your third one then?
This one was actually the hardest one for me to
Yeah.
kind of nail down. After the first two, I realized like that's usually what I order when I go to a Greek
Okay.
restaurant. One of those two things. But I leaned between going with either the gyro
Okay.
with tzatziki because that's kind of combo.
Sure.
But I actually think tzatziki could stand on its own,
Okay.
and that's what I went with.
Interesting. Interesting. So,
I love tzatziki.
do you like it more on the dill side, the more on the garlicky side?
So I prefer it to be a little bit more garlic heavy, but when it
Okay.
is a little bit more garlic heavy, it's able to carry a little bit more dill, a little bit more of the,
Sure.
the cucumber, and all of the other flavors a little better. But I like to
Sure.
have just a little bit of that nose bite in it where you know that garlic was just pounded right before it was added and like
Yeah.
it could have sat a little bit, you know?
Yeah. You know what I think? You know what I think you would really enjoy. So have you ever had? I don't know if they serve it in a Korean kitchen. Have you ever had bakala?
Bacala.
Yeah.
I I don't think so.
So
Bacala?
it's a dry fish that has to be rehydrated,
It's
and
Okay.
then the
cod.
fish gets it's caught, yeah, and it gets rehydrated, and then it gets shredded, and it goes into a batter, and then you make like a fish cake. Now with that, there is a garlic sauce that is heavily garlic,
I see.
but it balances out. Bacala, if it's not because it has to be rehydrated, it has to be washed because it is heavily salted because it
Salted,
is
yeah.
you know, but it balances out the the saltness very nice. I think that's something I think you'd really enjoy that.
Yeah.
We enjoy it.
There's another Middle Eastern, when you get like the wrapped shawarma pitas and then they give you that kind of garlicky mayo.
Uh-huh.
Even like generally tastes along that profile are things I definitely do enjoy.
Gotcha. So what meal do you think then could Koreans do better? What Greek meal do you think would be better if it
Okay.
was optimized for the Korean kitchen?
So first off, I think souvlaki is a good place to start. I
Okay.
love souvlaki. But you guys could have come up with maybe one or two other variations of flavors, like spicier ones, or we have like Korean barbecue marinades. We have like all these different iterations of it. And I'm not saying let's get rid of the original, because like you're right, it's a street food, and in every country I've ever really gone to with street food, it's about variation.
Okay.
And I think that's one of my first things. Like I love souvlaki, but
Yeah.
like let me get like a couple different ones.
So what would you add to it then?
I think just adding different like going with either a dip option or a marinade option is the choice, right? You
Okay.
either add a bunch of sauces like pommes frites are done in like Amsterdam and Holland, where like you curry and 400 different kinds of mayos and ketchups, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Or I think just give me like two or three more variations of it where it's like, okay, we have the original souvlaki, and then we have one that's marinated and spicy, and then
Yeah.
there's one that's, maybe sweet. I have no idea what kind of sweet flavor profiles Greeks could come up with.
Well, traditional Greeks don't really add sweetness to entrees.
Yeah.
That's more reserved for desserts. But I understand. I know what you're saying about listen. There's somebody out there who's listening to this who just rolled over and died when he's hearing that you
Yeah,
need
we're good.
to, because basically what you're saying is to make a sweet and sour chicken souvlaki.
Yeah,
That's pretty much
100%. Yeah, give me a Korean barbecue, give me kimchi mayonnaise on it,
now that
fusion
that
me.
now that being said, there's an idea for somebody to go start a food truck
Sure.
where you do like traditional Mediterranean and Southeast Asia type of cuisine mixed into it.
And I'm
So
sure someone has already tried, and those things do exist, but not really on a like when Korean people start new restaurants. Like it
yeah,
doesn't matter where it is, they have 16 flavors of chicken each. You know what I mean? Like that's just the culture. Is like a lot of Korean culture is very new, right? Like when I started thinking about this question, like what led to it is like access to ingredients, right? Like we didn't
hmm
really have olive oil, we didn't have dairy, we didn't have flour. Flour didn't come till after the Korean War, and dairy wasn't really like during till after the Korean War as well, right? So
yeah,
like the vast majority of food and ingredients are just completely different in terms of accessibility.
yeah.
And the other thing this really made me think about was Koreans don't roast or bake anything.
Okay.
I didn't realize until I started thinking about it because I was thinking about a lot of Greek dishes and they're mostly, tons of roasted and baked dishes.
hmm hmm
Koreans do stews and braises and things over water, in water, but never in a confined environment of controlled heat.
Right. So basically, the same way we were together this past weekend. So basically, how the meat was in the soup,
Exactly.
like that's how it's typically
It's
prepared.
cooked in a water into the soup, like or
hmm
direct overheat like Korean barbecue, which is technically pretty rare for people to eat regularly, right? Like at home, no one's eating like that all the time.
Right.
So if you look at it, I would say generally food is never really cooked with indirect heat like in an oven.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there any other dishes you think would be better in a Korean kitchen?
The interesting thing is like I think it would go the opposite way, where like there's a lot of Korean foods I would love to see be made by other cultures as well.
For instance.
Um, uh, like for instance, like we have a lot of different, dishes that end up kind of in the similar realm of stews and soups,
hmm
and,
hmm
and and our flavor profile kind of centers around the same thing over and over.
hmm
Like very iconic food is the bibimbap in Korea,
hmm
and bibimbap is usually a mixed bowl of rice with various ingredients, carrot, zucchini, and things like that, and then it's mixed together and usually with a chili paste.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I'd love to see something like that be made in Greece, where you're using Greek ingredients, right? Like maybe there's olives in there. I don't really know what there would be in there, but a
Yeah.
bowl of mixed, and the key point of bibimbap in Korea is it's very difficult, but you have to make every ingredient separately. You have to season each of them separately and then have them cohesively come together. And I would love to see something like that.
So we were just literally before we started recording, we were just talking about rice cookers and talking about in the Greek kitchen, rice cookers are is not a thing.
Sure, yeah.
You boil water and you cook your rice. You don't steam your rice. You
Hmm.
boil your rice. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So in retrospect, it's kind of interesting that way. And like you said, it'd be kind of interesting to see with some of these dishes if they actually had like steamed rice instead of rice traditionally the way how it's made in Greece. For you Koreans, I'm sure for millennia have been steaming rice. I'm assuming they have.
Yeah.
You know,
Before
um,
electronic rice cookers, we had giant clay pots.
yeah, with the same concept of steaming it.
Yep.
So it's kind of it's kind one of those things. Even when you think about, did rice start in in Asia? Did it start in India? Where did rice come from? Do we know that? Are you looking at it up?
Yep.
Because I think that
It says the oldest archaeological evidence of rice is in the middle and lower Yangtze River of China.
okay, so here's the thing. So when Marco Polo went to Italy, brought back noodles, did he bring back rice as well? And
It's
if
very
so,
possible.
why didn't he bring back the technology of rice cookers, or what it was back then? Kind of interesting when you think about it. Were the Chinese laughing at us, going, "Oh, you're going to have rice-a-roni"? Like I'm not, trying to make light of that or not, but it's kind of interesting,
Yeah.
you know. So what are your other thoughts on Greek food and your
Um.
palate?
So I did have something interesting for you guys that you probably didn't know, which
Okay.
is halloumi saganaki
Uh huh.
is number one trending barbecue sidekick right now in Korea.
Really?
Really? In
Yeah.
actual Korea or in Korean
Yeah, in
barbecue?
actual Korea, like Koreans, well, it started a couple years ago, like right around COVID,
Yeah.
but people found halloumi,
Uh huh.
and one of the things Koreans eat a lot is pork belly grilled on flat cast iron.
Right.
So it's hot, heavy cast iron. So when they
Uh-huh.
grill the pork belly, they grill now halloumi cheese.
Wow.
Interesting.
And so they eat this like soft, chewy, tender pork belly with this soft, salty saganaki cheese, and you end up with this cohesion of texture and flavor that Koreans are very into right now.
So when you go to Korea in a few months, are you gonna go check it out?
Of course. I mean, like, I already started laying it out, and like, I'm trying to make sure I hit at least every protein group, every 3 days and recycle.
Interesting. Is it bring your own lamb?
No, there's definitely, I mean, there's more lamb than there ever used to be in
So it's
Korea,
okay.
but it's still definitely not that good or
So is
The
this
popular.
the
other
way they make it? Is it? Remember you took me once to that Korean place, that other Korean place, where they had the pots at the table. Is that how they make the cheese like that? Is that the
Yeah,
concept?
exactly. You remember the one where it was like the pot lid,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then we just grilled meat on top of the pot lid, except they're
Yeah.
just also pieces of cheese.
That's crazy. And what are they doing? They just taking the melted cheese and mixing it in with the rest of their meal?
You just like cut them into small little cubes and you eat it with the pork, like the pork belly and the wraps and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also included now.
I don't know.
the other
I,
the
I
other thing that's similar in one type of food between Korean and Greek is what's the um what's the honey ginger dessert? It
Oh,
begins with a Y. Um,
yanggeng,
yeah,
yakwa,
YAKGWA. I think it's
yakwa. Yeah,
yeah. So Greeks have melomakarona,
mm-hmm.
which again are honey dipped and so forth. And so when I was doing some prep for this episode, that was one of the similarities that I found. In Korean, it's almost offered, from what I read, from a medicinal perspective. That
yeah.
particular dessert. So it's
So
sesame seed, rice wine.
yeah, and
Um,
it's got that texture where it's kind of like cakey and thick, but at the same time
exactly,
falls apart.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, but it's because the differentiation is Koreans don't have desserts; they have sweets.
interesting.
So generally, post meal, you're not eating a dessert. The only thing that usually follows a Korean meal that would be considered dessert, it'd be there's two types of punches that are served. One's a
Yeah,
rice punch called shike, and one's a cinnamon punch called sujeongwa.
yeah.
And basically, those are the only forms of real dessert in
Mm-hmm.
Korea, which is interesting seeing just how many like huge dessert cafes and coffee places come from Korea. Like that's all eaten as its own meal.
Yeah, and for Greeks, that particular dessert, macarona, are made predominantly around Christmas.
Hmm.
I mean, we used to have them year round whenever my mother wanted to make them. But
Yeah. But so the other day, John, we went when I was in Dallas visiting John. We went to a Korean gastropub, more or less, right, John?
Hmm.
But then afterwards, I'm like, John, we have to go get dessert after this.
Oh
So
yeah.
John's like, oh, we have to go. We're gonna go to this like I don't know what we're gonna go for Turkish desserts. So Turkish desserts. So we walk into this cafe and they had, it was run by Syrians, but they had baklava and they had, with the pistachios and they had Turkish coffee. But it was a little it wasn't what it was good, but it
It just
was
wasn't as authentic as you originally
well,
thought.
it was close. Same church, different pew because it was Syrian based. So the Turkish coffee uh had a little rose water added to it. So it was a little different and there wasn't as many grinds in the bottom. We flipped the cups over and it basically said that John was going to die from overeating. Um because in 48 hours we ate a lot of food. But no, because you're not a big sweets guy anyway, right, John?
No.
Yeah, you're more of a
Yeah.
entree protein.
Yeah. Savory is definitely more my alley.
Yeah, yeah. So, so if you could take one dish, you know how you always tell me that you go to some Korean restaurants and some places just specialize in one dish and that's all
Sure.
they make.
Sure.
So, outside of what we talked to, what would be if you were going to create a Greek Korean fusion dish? Would it be something with lamb?
Yeah, I would love to see something like that.
Yeah.
Or yeah, I feel like if it's gonna be a fusion, right? Like Greece is gonna bring me olive oil, tomatoes, garlic,
Hmm.
lamb, and Korea, I guess it comes with various techniques, but it's a lot about these various fermented sauces like
Hmm.
doenjang, which is the soybean paste, chili paste, which is gochujang, and soy sauce. So seeing like a mix of those flavors would be very interesting.
Yeah.
Um, but that being said, Korea has tons of fusion attempts all the time, and like they don't always work out that well, And sometimes
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just like a short period of time it could work, and then it's over.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Because
yeah,
that's one of his favorite terms is fusion. He love it. He loves everything fusion, especially Italian fusion. Look at him. He's shaking his head.
the downside, the downside of living in a place
Arizona.
that doesn't really compare to that kind of food coming from Asia. Um, no, it's also funny if you look at Greek restaurants especially in South Korea. There's like 4 or 5 of them on Yelp that get rated, and if you look at their menus, you know it's pretty neat.
Yeah.
There's also if you go out to like Reddit,
Mm.
there's other conversations. It's kind of funny. There's other conversations like this where people have thought about what Greek and Korean fusion would look like. Which there's a
Hmm.
lot of, which is the first thing I thought is take some of what you would find in Korean barbecue, the meats, make them into a gyro,
Hmm.
make a modified version of jajiki,
Hmm.
um, and then, as a matter of fact, now we're going to have to try that
Yeah.
because that would be pretty insane, right?
But looping back to what you were saying about the different smells they're saying about like gamey meat. But John, like even a Korean barbecue, you got whatever the mackerel there that my God, when you put it on the grill there, someone's got like the stench that comes from those fish, like they find that very palatable, much more so
Yes.
than lamb.
So the funny thing is, like, I feel like when they're describing those as smells, they're
Yeah.
differentiating kind of like the smell that you smell when you're actually tasting something versus the
Okay.
smell when you're only smelling something.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
they're very picky, like, even with chicken, right? It's
Hmm.
not even like chicken has a massive chickeny taste, But like, say you just boil the chicken and you taste it, you'll taste a lot of that chicken flavor, right? And then you fry it, and suddenly
Sure.
it doesn't have any chicken flavor, and suddenly you
Right.
start to distinguish that it has a taste, and that's what
Gotcha.
Koreans are very like.
Well, no, go ahead. Finish what you're gonna say.
I was gonna say, I think a lot of it also stems from like Korea was such a poor country.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume there was a lot of trauma with them eating bad food, when they were
Right.
hungry. So like any remote smell or indication that this food might be not as fresh or not as good, it probably has exacerbated over time to become that's no longer edible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And
also
go ahead.
yeah. I was just going to say with lamb in particular. I mean, I've had lamb, even though we grew up with it, made not made by us, that I thought was gamier than I remember, and other people have commented even in the states about the same thing. But that's also why one of the ways, because it's basically monosaturated fats that are causing what you smell. That's why a lot of marinades, anything that has red wine vinegar, mustard, rosemary, those are all neutralizers. And if you
Mm-hmm.
look at the spices that Greek cuisine uses for the lamb improperly prepared, you see some of those same ingredients. Plus, it's
Yeah.
technique. It's like anything else, right? It's people who
Sure.
Yeah.
like smoke beef brisket and they go, "Oh, it's too dry." Well, you cooked it too much,
Mm-hmm.
or it's not tender enough. You didn't cook it enough, and then you get the brisket that somebody cooked properly, and it's the best thing you've ever had. So I think some of that probably comes into play, not just in Korea, but in general when it comes to a protein
Yeah.
like lamb.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think with Korea, and I'm taking a guess at this. I can't say this with certainty. I think when you look at the geography of Korea and where it's located, most of your lamb is most likely, if it's not coming, I don't know if there's lamb farms there, but if they're importing it, it's probably going to come from Australia or New Zealand. And that being said, what a lot of times happens, and it happens here in the States too, you're not getting lamb, you're getting mutton, which is older
Hmm.
lamb, which tends to have a little more of that gamey taste to it, which could contribute to the issue. And especially if a lamb is not a lamb is not a lamb type of a thing.
100%.
So I think that could definitely add to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
So
consumers aren't as educated, right? Like, say I tried to
sure.
pass mutton off in Greece,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna fly through. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no way my business survives passing off mutton as lamb. But in Korea, where they don't really consume it, right? Like,
Yeah.
as a new business owner who's following trends, I want to try making a lamb dish. I buy lamb from this company that gave me mutton, and I just think it's bad, and I knew it tasted like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you
It-
talk
it-
about cooking techniques, you see, I've again when I was doing some research online, there are Greeks that move to South Korea, and one of the things you talk about technique that they talk about is the oven isn't a appliance that's often used because of the. So if you're Greek trying to cook a lot of recipes like Greeks that go in an oven, that could be problematic.
It's just storage for us. That's where my mom keeps all her pots and pans.
You know what, John? It's so
That's
fun.
funny.
You know how many people do that they use it for storage and it blows. But again, it's a
And the
cultural thing.
dishwasher.
What does she do?
Oh,
Oh, because she hand
Our
washes
dishwasher
everything.
is never washed. Yeah, like after you wash, it's only to work as a drying rack.
Really?
I've My parents have never won the dishwasher once in their life. And we've
That's why
had one pretty much our whole entire life.
that's why your hands are so small, soft because of the palm olive you're using.
Yep.
Exactly.
It's the dial, the green
The
one.
tile. But so yeah, so let's John, is there anything more you want to add to the food end of this conversation
Mm,
as we
I really
as
like
we
Yamista.
Yomista, yeah?
Yeah.
Yomista? Yeah.
And also there's a chocolate cake called Socolatopita.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
also very good.
Listen, next time you come to up this way, John,
Yeah.
we'll stop and go see my mother.
Yeah.
I told you, we were complaining on how much we ate in 48 hours while I was there.
Yeah.
You ate what you're going to eat in a 6-hour period, John.
Yeah.
Okay?
I've been to like strangers' houses that just happen to be Greek, right? Like imagine I had friends who were Greek and then
Yeah.
family who was Greek. You're right. Each of those tiers is a very daunting jump.
Well, you've been to the pig roast. Well, we had the pig roast here,
Of
so you know
course, yeah.
what it's like. So you weren't there, but last time John came to the pig roast, he brought his own uh
Oh
snow
yeah,
cone.
shaved ice machine. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I forgot I
Actually,
did that.
actually, I'm glad you said that because I actually looked after the second time I think that I went to that I was in Honolulu.
yeah,
We went to a
yeah.
shaved ice place, but it wasn't. There's shaved ice, and then there's the Korean
Oh, that's
version of it,
popping zoo.
Yeah, and
which
that's
which it's that you put a cylinder in the machine. And I
Uh-huh.
actually in a video, so I found this place. I forgot what it's called now, off the top of my head, but anyhow, I
It's called
found a
Sarbing.
video. I found the video of this same place in Waikiki that we went
Mhm.
into, and you could see a close up of what the machine was. I
yeah,
looked it up online. You can get one for like 600-700 bucks, but then
listen,
apparently you have to maintain the cylinders at a certain temperature because
when you
that was a whole different ball game.
listen, when you come up in March,
Yeah.
John showed me this place that we've been to. What is that? Cliffside Park or is that Palisades Park?
Oh, that one's in Palisades Park.
Well, I'm going to take you to this place, okay? Exactly what, and they serve it. And it's like, remember the first time we went? I said, John, how many should we get? And he's like, oh, we should just get one. And I'm like, get one? I'm like, we need multiples. Like, worst mistake of my life.
It doesn't when we went to this place and then they gave us what we ordered, it doesn't look like what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
I
It
mean, it
looks
just
just like snow, and then it's
Yeah.
covered in like either fruit or sauce. And it's basically an anti-griddle that's picking up very small layers of liquid and shaving it down perfectly every time, right? And
Yeah.
yeah.
the nicer commercial ones go about 2-3 grand.
Wow.
But like those, you could just take vials of like the flavors, keep them in your fridge, and like when you want, you toss it in there, and it shaves it up. One of my friends used to work in high school at one of those cafes, and she said, "When I grow up, like in my house, I will have one." So she bought one. So whenever guests come to their house, she makes them these
Well,
really nice.
that's what I said. I have a pizza oven, I have a popcorn maker. Now I need one of those and then a space to put it because
Listen,
Yep.
like I said, when you come up, I'll take you. You can talk to them if you want. They do an awesome. What is it? Oh, they do the waffle croissant. What do they
Oh,
call
the
that?
croffle.
The croffle they do with Nutella.
Uh
oh my
huh.
god,
Croffles
It
are so
is.
good.
You
I'm
know,
gonna have to
John.
turn
Maybe
off.
I'll take him to the Korean diner we went to.
I was gonna say you're about to just do the same exact trip we did last time. You're gonna go one,
Yeah,
two, three, eat
I'm
fire
yeah,
chicken, then eat the ice.
I'm
yeah.
gonna have to I'm gonna have to turn off my glucose monitor for that trip.
Because we were last time he was here, we are gonna go, but then I was like, I didn't feel like driving, so we just went to Korean barbecue. And but this time he's gonna come. I'm gonna take this. We can get the pork chop. You
Oh
know?
yeah, the pork cutlets.
Yeah.
They're like this
Yeah.
big.
Yeah, there you go. You're lucky. This is like one fat pig.
You're like, I didn't even know you could own plates that big. Yeah, sounds
All
good.
right, so let's we're gonna cross over now topics, and we're gonna talk about the Greek invention of the week in this episode. So why don't you
Yes, and
take it
this
from
this
here?
should be this should be a quick one, but I just had to mention it because I came across it as part of looking for new inventions like we've done in prior episodes. So so this week's Greek invention is that most likely it's ancient Greeks and specifically Diogenes the Cynic, who was a philosopher historian in about the fourth century in fourth century BC in Athens, who basically invented the middle finger as an insult. So the story goes, so that was Diogenes the Cynic, was what he was known as. Apparently, the historian philosopher Diogenes Laertios wrote that when Diogenes the Cynic, apparently there's a lot of Diogenes in ancient Greece, made the rude gesture when he saw an orator, Demosthenes, which he was not a fan of. He basically gave him the middle finger and shouted, "There goes the demagogue of Athens." And so Modern historians who've looked at the history of this have basically said that ancient Greeks probably used the middle finger to represent an erect penis, and then afterwards that was also picked up by the Romans that kind of did the same thing. Now, Diogenes the Cynic was somebody who, on purpose, lived as a homeless man. He would basically, during the day, walk the streets telling people that he was looking for the one honest man and he could never find him. And the
Mm-hmm.
fact that in his name is the Cynic, that sort of became a way to show disdain. And at that point, that was sort of the beginning that again in history got picked up by the Romans, and then I didn't look at the entire history into modern days, but so there again another interesting ancient Greek invention, the
What
middle
was his name?
finger.
What was his name again?
Diogenes the Cynic,
So does that where the term being cynical comes from?
probably.
Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
there's actually a I forgot the name of the city, but there's actually a philosophy called Cynic philosophy that
Hmm.
evolved. Um, it was a city along the Black Sea
Hmm.
between 412 or 404 BC,
Hmm.
and he's actually considered um, one of the founders of Cynic philosophy.
Okay,
So there you have it.
John, in Korea, when you want to give the fingers, the finger in Korea.
Yeah, I think like just because a lot of Korean culture stems post Korean War, like where
Yeah.
American soldiers were there, like a lot of the curses and a lot of those things just kind of get picked up into modern culture similarly.
So
Um,
are they said in English or there's a Korean derivative like
so there
version
are
of it?
Korean equivalents
Yeah.
of curse words, but they don't translate the same way.
Okay.
You know, like it's not
Yeah.
like like there is a word for say for instance like saying bitch for instance,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, which
Yeah.
could be also used as other words like dog, and so that
Sure.
gets translated vernacularly, but like the word fuck, like it just doesn't necessarily translate over, you know.
Yeah. We're gonna bleep that out. But one of my so we're pushing up against our time now, but I just want to tell this story, John, because it's such a funny story, and we had a chuckle about it. So when I went to see John the first time after he moved down there back in May, I took John. I called John up. He says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going down to Daily Plaza. Do you want to go to Daily Plaza?" He's li- and he goes, "Oh, what's Daily Plaza?" So I had to explain to him what Daily Plaza was and what happened at Daily Plaza. So for those of you, it's the site where JFK got assassinated in November 1963. So we went to the book depository there, went to the top floor, and we're walking around. You can actually see the window where uh, JFK was shot at by Oswald there, and so we were walking around the museum and seeing different things. And John has never seen, and still to this day hasn't seen the movie JFK. So he
Wow.
still doesn't know, hasn't seen the Hollywood's interpretation of the movie. So I said to John, I said, let's go outside. We have to go down to the grassy knoll. So he goes, what's at the grassy knoll? I said, well, the conspiracy theory is that there was a shooter at the grassy knoll, and somebody shot from the front, somebody shot from the book depository, and the whole magic bullet theory. And when you go into book depository, they have a whole section there about the magic bullet. So him and I walk outside. You can actually walk behind the fence of the grassy knoll, and we're sitting out there, and we're just looking at each other. And John, what did we say?
There's no way.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I'm looking for the picture right now, but this grassy knoll is tiny. It's like that's it. That's the whole thing. And you're saying someone shot a gun. I could yell from that. I could sneeze from that distance, and you wouldn't be able to, like, not locate me.
So it's
Impossible.
So for the drive back, because I think we went to get something to eat after that. We did. We went to what's that place called? What's the spinoff of the Grand Lux? We went to the Grand Lux. I was staying at the
Oh
Galleria.
yeah.
So John, well, let's go at the
We ate
Grand Lux.
so much there. Oh
And
my
I remember,
god.
and I got the fresh made.
And then he ordered a bucket of cookies out of
the end because they
That's
freshly make.
That's the upscale version of Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the desserts are made to order there.
Oh, it's
So I
so
said,
crazy.
John, we need some dessert. He says, what? I said, they make some delicious, like freshly baked cookies. We just got to give them 15 minutes. And they were good. Don't get us
They're
wrong.
great.
You know, but I just remember that, and just that, and that's from that moment on, we knew that, as our significant others always say, that we're not allowed to live near each other because we enable each other. Because John will come up with an idea, and I'll be like, sure, let's do it. I'll do the same thing, and John will be like, let's do it. Like even this past weekend, we were talking beforehand. Like, we had a wonderful lunch. We went to H Mart to go look at rice cookers, and then we're like, well, we're gonna eat later. We need to take it easy. What are we gonna do? We drove, it was an hour. No, well, an hour from your house, but it was a solid 45 minutes. We drove into Oklahoma to go to the WinStar Casino to walk around there for like 40 minutes, and then jump back in the car to make it back down to have dinner. Man, that
Yeah.
I thought
I'm used
John.
to presenting numerous options and having my partner say no, no, no until she picks one. But like with this scenario, it's like I come up with an option and it's like also that, also that, also that. It's
Because
just not healthy.
if they weren't with us, John, we would have gotten fried
We would
pasta.
have actually probably ended up at Sid's, to be honest.
So, all right, folks. So I think that we're gonna wrap it up for today. So, for those of you who are watching, please remember to feel free to comment. Please subscribe. And until next time, for Yanni in the middle here, I am Petraki.
And I'm Soto.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you
Thanks.
guys.